Krishna consciousness while he was pursuing a master's degree in horticulture in Poland. And that's when he received Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita for the first time. And at that time, there wasn't any ISKCON temple in Poland. So Prabhu would just read the Gita, and over time, he would begin practicing aspects of Krishna consciousness. And in 1990, he moved to Ottawa with his family, and he was able to connect with our own ISKCON Ottawa. And in 1995, he took formal initiation from His Holiness Niranjan Sai Maharaj. And he's a strong backbone for our community, and he's always serving and providing guidance to others. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome to him, and Prabhu, I'll hand it over to you now. Hare Krishna.
Radha Madhava ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gauranga ki jai. Hare Krishna. So today I would like to read from Bhagavad Gita. Maybe a question prayers first. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-Jana-Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Tasmai Shri-Guru-Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachavantam Hnumangarate Girim Yat Pipatamaham Vande Shri-Guru-Dinatayam Nama Om Vishnu-padaya Krishna-Pushtaya Bhutale Shrimati-Niranjana-Swami-Tivinam Anahata Prayasana Prabhupadasya Pushtaya Sankirtana-Pravitiratam Bhakta-Guru-Namaha Nama Om Vishnu-padaya Krishna-Pushtaya Bhutale Shrimati-Bhakti-Vedanta-Swami-Tivinam Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shminavali Paschacharya Shatarini Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's good. Please. I think that was flowers. Can you come here? Can you come here for a second? Now I can offer it to you, okay? Hare Krishna. So today, I'm sorry, promise, I'll take this off because my glasses are going to steam. So I thought about reading today a verse from chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 16. I asked Krishna Dua, what should I speak about? And he said, just keep it like that. So I thought chapter 2 seems like light. Okay, so verse 16. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayo api drishtam tas, tvani anayos tattva darshibi. So we can do word for word. Na, never. Asata, of the non-existent. Vidyate, there is. Bhava, endurance. Na, never. Abhava, changing quality. Vidyate, there is. Sata, of the eternal. Ubayo, of the two. Api, verily. Drishta, observed. Anta, conclusion. Two, indeed. Anayo, of them. Tattva, of the truth. Darshibi, by the seers. Translation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There is no endurance of the changing body. That the body is changing every moment by the actions and reactions of the different cells is admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between the matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever-changing, and the soul is eternal. The conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalists and personalists. In the Vishnu Purana 2.12.38, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes All have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi Vishnur Bhuvanam Vishnu. The words existent and non-existence refer only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all series of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and the parcel, living entity, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thoroughly study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being, understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entity belongs to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and energetic, the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as a subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. So, Prabhus, I will honestly admit that I'm not really very well practiced in speaking, and I will definitely need your help. And I'll tell you what my thought is, and I hope that you're going to preach to me. So, my thought is that the context of this verse is that Arjuna was in a fairly great distress. He was on the battlefield. He was supposed to do his job. His job as a kshatriya was to fight, and he was, he was compelled to perform his duty, do his job. But in the process, he started to, think about what's going to happen when he does this job, and he realized that so many people are going to get killed. People on his side, people on the other side, and the other side were also his family. And just thinking, making the decisions, what should I do? Should I fight? Should I not fight? What's going to happen? It just put him in a lot of anxiety to the degree that he had almost like an existential dilemma. Should I fight, or should I just go to the forest and just leave it? And he didn't know what to do. He was honestly disturbed. Now I was thinking, okay, this was Arjuna. This was 5,000 years ago. He was a great personality. All scriptures describe him. He was a personal associate of Lord Krishna. And so what does it have to do with me, or what does it have to do with us? So I was trying to make a case, how is it that it is relevant for us to compare situation that Arjuna was in to the situation that is with us. So my thought was that, okay, Arjuna was a warrior, or he was in a kshatriya family, kshatriya order. What's the term? Kshatriya, Varna and Ashram. This kshatriya Varna is. So kshatriya is administrator. What means administrator? It means that somebody who administrates the laws that are in the land. Yes. Rajarshi is the term describing kings who were administering the law of God, and they were saintly and they were very attentive to the teachings of God, and then by proper understanding what are the laws, they would implement them using their nature, which is fighting spirit or spirit of dominating, ordering, things like this. So this class of people exists today as well. These are generally politicians, soldiers, army people, and even though they don't fight the battle like Arjuna was, where 18 million people died in 2 weeks or 1 week, I don't know. But they still have dilemmas. And we can just actually see the recent situation here. Imagine, the chief of police, Kshatriya, he didn't know, should I tell them to go to war or to take the guns and start shooting at people or putting gas or whatever, or should I just back off because some people may die, soldiers, and I think he was in quite distress because, as we can see, the whole situation was quite difficult, and ultimately he resigned. So it must have been quite a dilemma for him. Then we can look at other kshatriyas, like Mr. Trudeau, he's a politician, but also in the kshatriya realm. And so now he's thinking probably, what am I going to do? Should I go to next election or not? Are they going to vote for me or not? Did I do the right thing or not? So it's a problem, yes? Okay, so this is Kshatriya, but what other varnas we have? We have also Brahminical class, yes? Brahminical is the class, it's like the head of the society. The Brahminical class is supposed to think, supposed to understand, they're supposed to learn, and they're supposed to convey that knowledge to the rest of the society. So here we have also kind of, we could call it Brahminical, it's intelligentsia or scientists, yes. So scientists, they do all this research and they have to advise kshatriyas, they have to advise politicians. So what they do, they do research, they do study and so on, and then they advise. And then these politicians, they feel, should we listen to their advice or should we not listen to their advice? And then the scientists, they think, well, did we give the right advice? Or maybe something changes and stress. And then there's such an intense pressure on everybody, And if the scientist gives an advice, the whole nation or so many people will come and say, what is this advice? Where did you come up with this advice? What kind of scientist you are? And some of the scientists are being threatened, and all these kinds. It's stressful. Is it not stressful? Could they use some advice how to perform their duty? Because we're talking about their job description. So politicians, they have their job. Scientists, they have their job. And we were talking about Arjuna, who has his job to do this, and he was in a dilemma. Then next class is Vaishyas, like manufacturers and group of people that traditionally they were, their business was to deal, their occupation was dealing with trade, taking care of the land, producing goods, and supplying the society with whatever is needed. And we have also the group here in the present society, which is basically all the small businesses, big businesses, all kinds of businesses. And they, their job is to get some kind of means, put some managerial skills and produce some goods. And also in that situation, we can see how difficult it is for businesses to function in this crisis situation like this. Many of them, they don't know, should we stay open, should we close, are we going to survive, what to do, what should we do with ourselves, should we just, I don't know, go on welfare, or, where I have children, I have wife, I have family to take care of, how am I going to support myself? So it's difficult also. And then the last class is Shudras, which is the labor class. And we can see labor class is also in a big predicament. And they, first of all, they completely depend on the employment. If they don't have employment, they have to go on unemployment, get some welfare, which is not very, auspicious way of living. And they have to decide, what should we do in that situation? Should I change my career? Should I go and try to study for something else? But then what if I'm going to try to upgrade my skills? I'm going to invest some time in university and maybe I don't like it. Maybe I'm not good at it. So many problems, yes? So these are different categories of different jobs that can cause so much stress. By the way, I just wanted to ask you, Prabhu, just in your working experience, did any one of you ever thought about quitting job? Yes? I'm not even saying that you quit job, but the thought was there that I would like to quit. You were thinking yes? Yes. Anybody else? Yeah. I also, I have a fantastic job, but there were times that I thought, no, I don't need this, I should just quit or something. And Arjuna was here the same. He was thinking, I should quit. And it was stress for him also. So what other duties in the society we have as a society? What job is one type of duty that we perform. What other duties do we have? Would anyone like to say? Yes?
If the duties, we have to go to school.
Okay, great. It's brahmachari. In the Vedic system, it's called student, to be a student, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so can student be stressed? Can there be situation that it's becoming difficult to be a student? Can you give some examples that you experienced or you saw some other students experience? No, you have a good life. You don't have stress. Can anybody else think about something?
You just do like a potato in the ground. It's like, I'm good.
You're good, yes? That's great, that's fantastic. So we have a really nice students that somehow Krishna takes care of them so they don't feel very much stressed. But can adults think about difficulties that students can go through? An anxiety, type of anxiety?
Preparing for exams.
Okay, preparing for exams.
High school,
High school can be a stress, yes? Why?
because you're learning more new stuff.
Okay, it's more difficult, yes?
And more harder stuff.
Okay. Anything else that comes to your mind? Yes, Mother? Hare Krishna?
The schools don't teach what I want to learn.
Okay, yes, you have to learn whatever they teach you, not necessarily what you're interested in. Very good point.
We may not like just being served for lunch always.
Okay. Well, these are very, I don't think these problems are really worth going to Krishna. But I can think about many, like bullying, for example, dealing with, meanness, because among students, there are nice students that are not so nice. There's, what else? The fear, yes?
Well, I think they are mentioned in Vedic culture, everybody's taught according to their propensity. But in modern time, everybody's taught the same thing and everybody learns the same way. But in people's genetic state, that's not the way they function.
And not everybody is the same, yes.
Yeah. So there are different people getting anxiety because they can't learn the way they're being taught, or they can't learn what they're being taught. They don't care. There's a lot of social pressure.
Yes.
You have to look cool and you have to be cool.
Yes. I remember as a student in a primary school, my greatest fear was to fail the year. And it was big deal, because in Poland they used to fail students. It wasn't that, if you could fail if you get, not enough average or whatever, they would fail you. And there were cases that children were failed, and that was very stressful. You would feel very ashamed or scared that something like this can happen. Probably you were trying to say something.
So even like in school also, we have so much pressure because we need to get a good college. So for that we have to sacrifice each and every moment if you are in high school. So and that much pressure, you go and write exam, and if you get like your marks is not good, and again it will be like a pressure from family, society, everything.
Yeah, and pressure, and what Mother was saying, that sometimes if you can't meet the expectation of pressure, then people get depressed, they get, really...
Suicide also, students, high
yes.
school students, they do suicide.
There was a big case about some parents trying to bribe or create something that the children would be accepted to a prestigious university. And so of course, maybe that was the parents that were stressed, but as a result of that, because this is also the parents putting pressure on the children were so embarrassed that their parents were, caught for this kind of cheating, and they were arrested. Some of them went to jail. So imagine how the children had to feel, the students had to feel. Yes, big stress. And all media wrote about this. So everybody knows. What's your name? Oh, you're the one that parents have done this. Imagine living with that. That's stressful. Prabhu?
I think we are going around the same topic. The biggest responsibility is educating children, basically, right from the grassroots level. So that whatever issues we are discussing, they don't face, because a lot of issues which are faced today, 50 years ago they were not. Yes. Something has gone wrong somewhere. Either we are overanalyzed, or a lot of things are there. Maybe our scope here, but basically raising the future generation in the correct manner.
There is also another element of being a student, another factor which can be a cause of anxiety, is the student has to have, is often a child, has to deal with the authority of the parents, authority of the teachers, authority, and that can be nice or can be very stressful also. If, let's say, parents are drinking and they, the father comes home and he's drunk and then he beats the children, or, he doesn't provide whatever they need to do to perform, and so that can be also another source of anxiety. For example, Prahlad Maharaj, he had a father and he was going to school, but he was learning, but his father didn't like what he was learning, and he put a lot of pressure on him. To the point that he was trying to kill him. It's a student. It's very stressful. So there's a variety of things. Then, okay, grihastas. Let's go to grihastas. What can be for householders? What are their duties, and what type of difficulties they can encounter while trying to perform their duties? No problems for grihastas. Easy life. That's the best ashram to be in, yes?
Making sure that children are doing okay in school and happy.
Yes.
We come back to the same places, that if the education is not right, then all the three ashrams are going to collapse.
Yeah, but whether it's right or not right, we're dealing with it, as a whatever. So what is the common, what are the things that you think are a problem that can really make us go to God and pray?
Well, financial concerns.
Very good.
And not only that, but the Grihastha ashram is supposed to support the entire society. So the economic situation is created by the activities of the Grihasthas. So besides supporting themselves, they have to support everybody else.
Yes. So financial, anything else?
No, the most important thing is the relationship plays the key role.
Very good.
And it's not only Grihastha, it's a relationship regardless of Grihastha, basically, in all the ashrams, unless you are Atmaram.
Yes.
There are multiple types of varieties of relationships, what centric the relationship is, and that drives the net result.
Yeah, but in relationship to, especially to specific duty of the Grihastha ashram, which Mother said, yes, Krishna?
Training their own children and acting in such a way that the culture is a good culture.
Yes, they'll end up being successful and happy.
Yeah, being nice to each other.
Yes. So within that ashram, I can think about one quote that Prabhupada said, or somebody else said, I think Prabhupada repeated this, that it's easier to manage the kingdom than a family. Because when one has a household, so a head of the household, whichever, we don't have to make the distinction, men and women, that there's, different circumstances, but has to ensure that the family is happy, is functioning well, is healthy. And as soon as there's a problem with one member of the family, the whole family is very deeply affected. So that's a very heavy task. It's like Arjuna was concerned about his family, the family on the other side, and the war was going to happen. The same, every householder has all these anxieties. What if my child is sick? Some parents, their children are, for example, have a psychological disorders. They get depression. Some take drugs. Some take, and householder has to deal. It's a very, very heavy. And some parents are so wiped, by dealing with just way over their head. We try to do the best, but not always we can do this. Yes? And like this, we go for Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha, for me, the good example is Dhritarashtra, and the instruction that Vidura, his father, gave him, that he was attached in Vanaprastha. We're supposed to get detached. We're supposed to stop being involved with all the family of business of the society and family, and trying to make sure that this person does things right. Vanaprastha is supposed to just start pushing these things away and focusing his mind on focusing the death is going to come, and focusing what's the best thing for me to do is thinking about Krishna, thinking about. And sannyas, what's the problem for sannyas? Anybody think about the problems for sannyas?
It's never documented anywhere.
Pardon?
Yeah, there's a saying, which I heard multiple times in Hindi lectures, is that all the scriptures talk about the problems of all the ashrams, but not a single scripture talks about the problems of sannyasis. They are always word of mouth and transferred secretly from word of mouth.
Well, you can probably ask sannyasis, yes.
So they won't discuss.
There's many examples of sannyasis who had problems in the Vedas. Meditating underwater and hearing the ankle bells of some girl walking by,
Yes.
and being, tempted in so many different ways.
Well, just put yourself in there and try to walk in a shoe of another person. They don't have. They're supposed to renounce the family relationships. It can feel very lonely. If you have to travel from place to place, you don't necessarily. You may not have an opportunity to develop some close relationships that you can have somebody that you can confine right away or whatever, because you're only supposed to see people, for a short period of time. Yes, you're not supposed to be. So it can be lonely. It can be difficult. Health, yes.
Problems with disciples.
Problems with disciples, yes. Something. I would like to really, because sometimes we may think that, sannyasi doesn't have a problem. The only problem is with others. But I'm pretty sure that every person has the problem with themselves. For us, it should, of course, those who are very advanced, they completely rely on Krishna. And for them, it's no problem. They don't feel lonely or they have complete shelter. But to that level, there's not that many. Most of the people, they experience a lot of different problems. So anyway, could we agree that we can somehow find relevant, we can compare ourselves with Arjuna in some respect and find that his distress, we can see some relevance in our own life. Can we agree on this? Can everybody agree or can somebody disagree? Everybody agrees. Okay, so now, obviously, the situation that Arjuna found himself was one of stress, of some suffering, of discomfort. And it was so intense that he turned to Krishna and he asked him, please tell me what to do. And this chapter, the second chapter, and Krishna basically replies, Arjuna says to Krishna, please help me, tell me what to do. And in this chapter, Krishna tries to pick up Arjuna, tries to help him solve tries to remove his suffering from him. And there's many verses, but this verse, I'll just read the verse again. So he says, those who are serious of the truth have concluded that of all non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Why did Krishna say that to Arjuna? Like how? Why didn't he say, well, don't worry, Arjuna, I understand how you feel, maybe you should fight, or maybe you should not fight. Why didn't he give him some kind of advice like that? Why does he say something like this? What's the point of giving this kind of advice to somebody who's stressed? They're telling him, those who are serious of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. Can somebody, Mother, please, Mother.
Sure.
Yes.
Because if we continue to consider ourselves a body, then there's always going to be difficulty. And things are going to be constantly in flux. And just when you think you have something together, something else happens. And it's always a situation. But if you consider yourself a soul, you understand spiritual nature, then you understand that those things are superfluous. You don't get so disturbed by them because you realize they're uncomfortable and you're something else. But it's easier said than done.
So Mother said that, I'm going to say for the devotees because they cannot hear. So Mother just said that, we need to understand that, on the body platform, all these problems are coming, and this is the source of our problem. But if we understand that we are not the body, that our identity is spiritual, soul, then we can distance ourselves from these problems. Yes, the Mother said that it's easier said than done. But that's why Krishna said what he said here. That's the difference between that. And Prabhupada here in the purport, he stresses basically the point that we need to first think, if we find ourselves in a situation that is stressful, that is difficult, that we try to find a solution, first thing is first that we need to have a little bit of perspective, gain some perspective to ourselves. Who is suffering? Why am I suffering? Is there a way out of it? And Krishna, first thing he explains that you think that you're going to kill all your family members. You think that maybe on your side somebody's going to die. But who's going to die? Not you. Your body may die. But body never lasts. Body does not survive for long. Body takes birth, lasts for some time, produces some byproducts, and then gets old and then disappears. Like Prabhupada used the word, goes into oblivion. So why are you lamenting after the body? The body, has no endurance. And he says, but what has endurance, what is really important, what is not changing, is the soul. So if we understand that, then if we really can realize that point, that the soul is not changing, the soul does not die, the soul does not get sick, does not get any disease. If we start thinking that I am the soul, then all these troubles of the body, they become secondary. Yes, they will affect us, but they're not sweeping us off completely. They're not drowning us, because we have the perspective, okay, whatever happens, happens. But the soul, the consciousness continues to exist. So it's not the end. It's not like that. And Prabhupada also explained here that what is important, not only to understand that I'm the soul, but also what is the difference between Krishna and the individual living entity and the individual soul. And he explains that qualitatively they are the same. My minute living entity, I am a soul, which means I have a spiritual nature, which is Satchitananda. And Krishna is unlimited. But he's also Satchitananda. So he's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So qualitatively we're the same, but quantitatively we're not the same. We are just minute part of parcel, and Krishna is the supreme personality of God from which everything emanates. All energies, we are also Krishna's energy. We emanate from him. And Krishna doesn't have any beginning and doesn't have any end. Just like we, individual soul has no beginning, no end. We are eternally existing. So if we just understand that, it just really helps us to sort out a little bit, the category of problems that we are in, which is related to the body. So, okay, so we have some issues with the body, but really these are just temporary issues. It's like watching a movie. I'm turning on TV, I'm watching the movie, and I get into the action, but I know that, this action is not happening to me. This is just something, and I can turn off the TV, and I'm just outside, yes? So similarly, we can get that perspective to our own life, our own suffering, and we know that at some point this is going to end, but the watcher, the person who's perceiving is going to continue. It's not changing. It's not going to get cancer, like a soul does not get cancer. Body does, but soul doesn't. So Krishna thought that this is the first thing that Arjuna needs to understand. And then also Prabhupada explains that one needs to understand what is the relationship between that little individual soul and the Supreme Soul. And everything is somehow related to everything. In this world, we can see all these relations. We can see that the rain is related to the ocean. The ocean is related, the sun is evaporating water in the ocean. The ocean goes up and in form of the rain clouds goes distributed. There's so many intricate, and scientists, they study all relationships, the ecosystem and so on. So similar, there's a relationship between individual soul and the Supreme Soul, and that relationship is the one of servitude. We can fulfill, find our place, our belonging, because just knowing that I'm a soul, so what? I'm a soul. So what am I going to do as a soul? And what the soul has an activity, and the activity which is, it's a function of the soul. Eternal activity is the relationship with Krishna, and that relationship with Krishna. There is another term used in Vaishnava traditions called bhakti. It's a loving relationship with Krishna, and so I just wanted to read a small thing about the suffering and how to deal with the suffering in a practical way from the little book here, Madhurya Kadambini, Club Blank of Nectar, by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur. And
what is the name of the book?
Madhurya Kadambini. So it speaks about bhakti and the progression of bhakti, of relationship, how that relation, every relationship, the relationship when it starts within this material world, when we experience relationship, it has some beginning, we have some reconnaissance period. Yes, we let's say somebody meets somebody and they kind of try to understand, they go maybe for coffee together and then they figure out, oh, it was nice talking, maybe we can do it again. And then if they like, they continue to get to know each other. And at some point, then maybe, would you like to meet my family? It's like this. So there are stages in which nobody jumps into a relationship right away and it's 100% and everything. Usually there's different stages. So similarly in the relationship with Krishna, because we forgot that relationship. So even two friends, when they get apart for a long time, and then they meet each other after a while, they not necessarily jump right away. But they try to understand how this other person feels, and there's a little conversation, and then they get closer, and then they become, very, very comfortable and very happy in exchanging thoughts, ideas, or emotions, and so on. So similarly in Bhakti, even though we have eternal relationship with Krishna because we are just like Krishna, we are Satchitananda Vigraha, but because of the long separation, to renew that relationship, we need to start with something. And we're starting with Shraddha, with a little faith. We're learning a little bit about Krishna, we're learning about ourselves and so on. But that bhakti, that relationship is it can progress very intensely. And the relationship can start from just saying hi, how are you, to very, very emotionally charged interaction between two persons that love each other, that care for each other, that do anything for each other. So here is this. I'll just read a little bit that describes the nature of that relationship and what does it do to the person who is engrossed in the concept of material body. Yes. So pure bhakti unmixed with karma and jnana is just like a wish-fulfilling creeper appearing in the field of the senses. So, wish-fulfilling creeper, which appears in the senses. I think it's very, very relevant to understand that our senses in the material body, they are engrossed in so many things. They just want to, be satisfied, and they catch for this and that, and the mind is doing thinking, willing, and feeling, and trying to, use the senses to create some kind of buzz, some kind of happiness, but it never works in the body. But here we see that bhakti is like a wish-fulfilling creeper appearing in the field of the senses. So it means that the senses can be completely satisfied, because bhakti is a wish-fulfilling creeper. It can fulfill the desires of the senses to be satisfied. This bhakti is the refuge of fortunate devotee who firmly vow, Jita Vrata, never to seek any fruits except bhakti. Like bees obsessed with the desire to taste on the nectar, Madhu Vrata. So somebody who really wants to satisfy their senses completely and is completely dedicated to that mission, if they really want to have the senses satisfied and they focus that they will do it through means of bhakti, then that bhakti becomes accessible, that their heart having access to that method of satisfying senses. The very life of this creeper is service favorable, anukulya, to the transcendental pleasure of the Lord. So if we engage ourselves in a favorable way in serving Krishna, then our senses are going to be, the creeper of bhakti is going to satisfy our senses. Like a touchstone, the very presence of bhakti makes the heart and senses gradually lose their iron-like material qualities and acquire pure golden spiritual qualities. The newly sprouted creeper of sadhana bhakti unfurls two leaves pointing upwards. The first is called kleshagni, relief from all kinds of material distress, and the second is called shubhada, beginning of all auspiciousness. So the reason I thought this is relevant is because Arjuna and we, by inference also, or by experience, we experience suffering and lack of success in so many ways. And the solution to this is bhakti, and the symptom of bhakti is relief from all kinds of suffering, distress, and beginning of all auspiciousness. So now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that there are 5 types of klesha destroyed by bhakti. Klesha, which is sufferings, destroyed by bhakti. And these are avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Klesha literally means suffering or affliction, but here it may be taken as the cause of suffering. So these are the causes of suffering. This klesha, avidya, and so on. They are described in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, 3rd Sutra of the Sadhanapada, which explains that these are factually 5 different kinds of causes of avidya, ignorance. From them arise the tendency to right or wrong action, causing religion or irreligion, and thus sinful and pious activities. According to the reaction, prarabdha, of the sinful or pious activities, one meets with fortune or misfortune. And there is these 5 causes of suffering, so I'll read them. Avidya. Avidya is ignorance, to mistake that which is impermanent to be permanent, that which is full of misery to be blissful, that which is impure to be pure, and that which is not the self to be the self. So that's the verse that ignorance is the cause of suffering, and the symptom of ignorance is to take that which is impermanent to be permanent. So taking that the body is permanent and we invest in the body, but body is impermanent. And that which is permanent is the soul. That's what Krishna explained to Arjuna here, yes? Then that which is full of misery to be blissful, the thinking that body can be the source of pleasure for us. But body is the source of misery. There's four functions of the body. There's birth, which is painful, death, which is painful, and in between there is old age and disease, yes? These are not sources of pleasure or bliss. They are sources of suffering. But we take it that the body is a source of pleasure. So we invest in the body. We shelter the body, we buy a car for the body, we feed the body, and we get so absorbed in the body. And if the body is becoming somewhat affected, or then we get all worked up about this because we think it's going to be a source of pleasure, but it never can be a source of pleasure. It's going to be a source of misery. So that's avidya. That's ignorance, thinking that it is. That which is impure to be pure, and what is not the self to be the self. So thinking again in reference to body. The second cause of suffering is asmita, false ego. The body identification of I and mine, and to accept only direct sense perception as real. The third one is raga, attachment, the desire to obtain material happiness and to decrease suffering. Tyaga and boga. Or no, is it tyaga? No, it's desire to obtain material happiness and to be. So we are thinking about just to be happy and how to avoid suffering. These are two things. Dvesha, hatred, aversion to unhappiness, or the cause of unhappiness. So if we develop, a person can ask, why should we not have aversion for unhappiness? Why should we not? Is it wrong to have aversion for unhappiness?
Aversion for unhappiness?
For unhappiness. Is it wrong or not?
I don't think so.
Well, if you develop aversion to unhappiness, then you start really working hard to avoid unhappiness, yes? And was it Prahlad Maharaj that said that, just like, by our karma, whatever amount of unhappiness we have to accomplish, we'll get it anyways. We don't have to work for it. We don't have to make any effort. We don't meditate, how can I be unhappy? It will come on natural course. So if we develop aversion for it and we start acting, dedicating all our energies to avoid it, and it's going to come anyways, you can't avoid it, then, it's going to be a source of unhappiness for us.
Just going to say, it's so much worse that way. If you're trying to be averse to unhappiness, really, really averse to it, and then it happens, feels like it's a lot worse than
yes.
You didn't expect it, or
yes. And then the fifth one is abhinivesha, instinctively clinging to bodily enjoyments, and fear that death will cut one off from all the enjoyments. So that's another thing, because death is going to come, but we cling to it. Some people, the way they cling, they want to be younger, they want to look younger, they use different means of, making sure that they are young forever, just using some Botox or some, they exercise very much so they don't age and so on, but they will age at some point, and it's just becoming the sort. And they realize as they do this, they try to be younger. After 70 years of doing this, they look in the mirror and they go, well, I'm not young anymore. It's stressful. So, I'm going to stop here. I just wanted to say that, when you look at all these sources, causes of suffering, Krishna did not mention anything about, other people making us miserable, or he wasn't Vishwanath Chakravarti doesn't speak about these things. He goes to the point that we need to resolve these issues internally. It's not like Krishna says, to Arjuna, well, you're in distress. Should I just make everybody disappear? It's going to solve your problems, yes? Krishna, I can't decide. So can you make the war go away? That wasn't even a question, because material world is built in such a way that these sufferings, they will come. It's structured this way. So trying to, solve all our problems, but removing them from the material world is not going to solve it. We have to solve our internal vision. So if we can do that, then we can automatically become free from suffering, which is the first symptom of bhakti. I'll stop here and I'll ask the devotees if they have any comments or suggestions on the topic of suffering.
If there's any devotees online also that have any questions, you could raise your hand at the bottom screen. There's the reactions button. Feel free to do that. And in the temple, devotees have any questions? Surrender, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
I mean, we are talking about issues. The main thing, I think, what the focus was today, that how much it impacts us, how we can, because they, as you said, is designed like that. Ukala and Usasuka, what you just said. But how much it impacts us is basically we have to come to that level, and we don't want those issues to become impediment in our progress.
Yes. Well, the point is that, just like happiness doesn't come, if I'm happy, happiness doesn't come from some other place. It comes from my heart. Some other place can stimulate it, can kind of, stimulate or catalyze it, but it still comes from my own heart. So if the happiness comes from my own heart, yes, I may meet somebody that is very happy and, by the exchange, then I feel happiness, but that happiness that I feel comes from my own heart. So similarly, unhappiness, also stress, also comes from my own heart, even though somebody may stimulate it, but it still comes from my own heart. Yes, the fact that I'm unhappy because somebody did something to me, it comes from me. I could react to this in different ways. I could say, oh, he did something to me, so then I'm unhappy. But I could react also and say, he did something to me, so what's the problem? I'm happy anyways. It comes from our own heart, yes? So if we can realize it, and we can start working on controlling this in that way, then we can control the whole world by not allowing it to affect us. And the way to control the whole world is to completely focus on that relationship with Krishna. Because Krishna will not disappoint us, and that's why the process of bhakti is described here. If we can do that, then we can control the emotions that are coming out of our heart. We can allow Krishna to control. He can guide us through it. But if we want to fight with the whole world, so the whole world does the right thing for us, so I can feel happy, or doesn't do anything that I can feel unhappy, then we'll never succeed in that. And that's the difference between understanding that we are not the body or we're the spirit soul, and what is the activity of the soul. Activity of the body is eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and all these things which are cause of problems. But the activity of the soul is loving exchange. So love is the pinnacle of happiness. So if we can somehow allow this emotion to take seat in our heart and cultivate this, then we're going to become independent. The suffering is going to go away.
I was thinking we spend a lot of time trying to, we hear it in the Bhagavad Gita, and you were alluding to it, trying to not be so attached, realize, what our position is. And, very often I remember we use the example of like the game of Monopoly. How when all the kids, they start to play Monopoly. I don't know if anybody's ever played a game of Monopoly, but it can get really heated at times. They're like, you came on my hotel. This was, how come you didn't give me a pass? And then people get so into it, and then they never want to play Monopoly again, because they really start to identify like, this is theirs, this is their property, they built so much within this world. And so, it's a challenge. I'm just looking at it and seeing how it's such a challenge to actually control these urges and work on them. And you're saying, that the real trick is to cultivate that relationship with Krishna, right? Because that really kind of provides, I guess, the relief. And so I was reflecting, we were talking a little bit before about it, and saying how taking shelter of Guru, right, as a representative of Krishna, gives that connection to that relationship. So.
Krishna, just like here in Bhagavad Gita, he gives knowledge to the disciple. He gives knowledge. He tells him how to make the distinction between body and soul, how to properly engage in the relationship, how to do the relationship nice. Relationships are very difficult. It's not like we know exactly how to behave in a relationship. Actually, we find out that to have a good relationship, it takes a lot of work. It doesn't just happen. So if it takes a lot of work, and so we need to learn somehow and how to do it properly. And that's why we need a guru who or somebody who knows, and then they let us know how to behave so a relationship is nice.
Specifically, I have it can be a two-part, or it can be a comment, or it can be a question. I just want you to decide. So, initially, as you mentioned, that Krishna is omnipresent, omnipotent, supreme Godhead, and omnilucent. So, having said that, Krishna definitely, he knew the past, the future, and the present at the same time. So, while giving the Hitobadesha on the battlefield to Arjuna, so he knew exactly what was going to happen then, and what was going to happen in the future. So, and then going forward, it would be, the Hitobadesha would be written as Bhagavad Gita, and that is the reason we are all sitting here. So, is it a part of the whole, like we are part of Krishna, and Krishna as being the whole Supreme Godhead, and our souls as being the part of the Krishna? Can it be explained as a well-rounded philosophy as such, or should be read as a part as we are reading it now? Can it be explained in a single phenomena as such, or can it be like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare? Is that a part of whole or a whole of a part? If you can understand my predicament here.
I'm not sure if I understand your predicament. How do you understand?
I'm not sure I understand either. It sounded at the beginning like you were saying that Krishna knew everything what was going to happen, so he spoke to Arjuna, but things are going to happen, and Krishna already knows what they are. So the Bhagavad Gita is kind of an afterthought. But the fact is that there's karma, which is, or there's certain things, if they're in place, it's pretty easy to see what's going to happen. And then we have our free will. Every living entity has free will. And the free will is worship Krishna or not. And you make that decision every second of every day. So the more you choose to go towards Krishna, the reaction is one way, and if you go away from him, the reaction is another way. And within that framework, you have your choices.
So it's all choices that we make on a daily basis. Then come to Krishna, whether we can come to whether we come closer to Krishna, or it's a daily choice.
Minute by minute, second by second, we're making that decision. I can get up in the morning and think I'm going to serve Krishna, and then I see something and I think, maybe I'll go shopping instead,
So it's the choices that we do on a individual basis. Yeah, I think that answers my question.
Yeah, the point of free choice is very important. I mean, if there would be no free choice, there would be no fun for Krishna or for anybody else. So there's no question of love and excitement of love if there's no free choice. So I think that element is always there, always will be there, it's eternally there. And that's why there's always a certain element of unpredictability, because there's free choice.
And it's up to us to make the decisions whether we want to go towards or far.
Yeah.
And the whole
the satsanga that we had right now, it preaches of how to achieve that going forward, like towards Krishna.
pastimes of Krishna, when he has, loving exchanges with his devotees in Vrindavan, it's not like, it's all predestined, everything is predestined, Devotees, they really, like Mother Yashoda, for example, she wants to bind Krishna and she wants to, reprimand him for being mischievous, yes? But she can't because Krishna is unlimited. But because of her endeavor, constant endeavor, she's sweating and she's doing everything. And then Krishna, on one hand, he has idea, he doesn't want to be bound by the mother because he wants to go and play with his friends, yes? But on the other hand, he sees his mother is putting so much effort to bind him that eventually in his heart, the compassion takes over and his desire to enjoy with the friends it becomes inferior to the fact that his mother wants to bind him and he allows her to bind her. So it's not like, everything is predictable. When you say Krishna, past, present, and future, this is only in material world that is relevant. In the spiritual world, it's just present. And then the present is just constantly intensifying interactions, loving exchanges with Krishna. And devotees of Krishna, they are like Krishna. Like Krishna, they are not as big as Krishna, but like Krishna. So their creativity, their ability, their whole process of thinking how to please Krishna is unlimited, And the more and more and more they intensify the feelings, the more they come up with the ways how can we please Krishna. And Krishna, when he sees this, he becomes pleased more and more, and he wants to reciprocate. So it's not like everything is set in stone, and it is what it is, and why are we even talking about Bhagavad Gita? That's material world, right?
So the time is not it's immaterial. Time is immaterial.
In spiritual world,
yes.
In material world, time is the factor that makes it impermanent. The body permanent, everything is impermanent.
So that arises the question of past, present, and future. But in the spiritual world, that time is immaterial. So it's always the present.
No, time is present only to decorate. It doesn't have deteriorating effect, but there's still sunrise or moonrise or something which we would contribute this to the time passages, but it doesn't have any deteriorating effect. It just has an effect of ornamenting or decorating the pastimes, or creating a mood and atmosphere for the pastimes to happen. Like evening pastimes are different, morning, during the day, it's different. So it's like that. Thank you very much. Very good. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Shri Govardhan ki jai.